My name is Heather, and at 28, I never imagined my life would turn into this story. For 3 years, I worked double shifts at Memorial Hospital to put my fiancé Brandon through medical school. $30,000, countless sleepless nights, and endless support. All for him to tell security I was just his roommate at his graduation party. The diamond ring I once cherished now sits at the bottom of a champagne glass. I never thought I could be so calculating. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button. What would you have done if someone you loved for 5 years suddenly treated you like a stranger? I met Brandon Winters during my second year as a nurse at University Hospital. He was doing clinical rotations as a pre-med student, tall, brilliant, with these intense blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. Our first interaction was nothing special. I was checking a patient's vitals when he came in to observe. He asked intelligent questions, showed genuine concern for the elderly woman in the bed. Unlike some of the other medical students who treated patients like interesting specimens, Brandon seemed to care. 3 days later, he found me in the cafeteria. "The patient in 302 asked about you," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. She said the pretty nurse with the kind smile made her feel better than any medication. I blushed, remembering Mrs. Holloway, who had been discharged that morning. "That's sweet of her." "She wasn't wrong," Brandon said with a smile that made my heart skip. About the pretty part or the kind part? Our relationship blossomed quickly after that. Coffee after shifts turned into dinner dates. Movie nights became weekend getaways. By month 3, I was completely in love with him. Brandon had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world. He remembered everything: my favorite flower, sunflowers, how I liked my coffee, 1 sugar, splash of almond milk, even the name of my childhood hamster, Mr. Whiskers. 6 months in, Brandon received his acceptance to medical school. We celebrated at a fancy restaurant downtown where I maxed out my credit card on champagne and steak. It was worth it to see his face light up as he talked about becoming a cardiologist. "My dad would have been so proud," he said, a rare moment of vulnerability. Brandon's father had died from a heart attack when Brandon was just 14. He always wanted a doctor in the family. That night, as we walked along the river under the stars, Brandon stopped and turned to me. "I don't know how I'm going to afford this, Heather. My mom can't help. She's barely making ends meet since Dad died. The scholarships only cover half and the loans." He shook his head, worry creasing his forehead. I didn't hesitate. "We'll figure it out together," I promised. "I've been thinking about picking up extra shifts anyway." What started as a few extra shifts turned into a second job at a private clinic on weekends. I canceled my gym membership, cut my own hair, and moved from my nice 1-bedroom to a studio apartment that barely fit a bed and a desk. Brandon moved in to save on his rent too. We ate ramen more nights than I care to remember. I sold my car and took the bus. Every spare dollar went into what we called the doctor fund. Brandon proposed on our 2-year anniversary. The ring wasn't large, a small diamond that caught the light just right, but it meant everything to me. "When I'm a doctor," he promised, his eyes shining, "I'll buy you one 3 times this size." "I don't need a bigger ring," I told him, meaning it. "I just need you." I was so in love that I didn't notice the subtle disdain from his family when I finally met them at Thanksgiving. His mother, Diane, a willowy woman with perfect blonde highlights and a perpetual look of mild disapproval, raised her eyebrows when Brandon mentioned I was a nurse. "Just a nurse?" she asked, emphasis on the just that made my skin crawl. "An amazing nurse," Brandon corrected, squeezing my hand under the table. "The best at University Hospital." His older sister Madison barely spoke to me, too busy talking about her lawyer husband and their vacation home in Aspen. His cousin Ethan, also in medical school at Johns Hopkins, kept asking Brandon why he'd chosen such a mid-tier program. I ignored it all. These people didn't matter. What mattered was Brandon and our future together. Every time I handed over my debit card to pay for his textbooks or tuition installments, I imagined our life after medical school. The beautiful house we'd build together. The children we'd have. Brandon in his white coat, saving lives. Me by his side, his partner in everything. "You're an angel," he would say, kissing me when I came home exhausted from a 12-hour shift, only to study for my own continuing education credits. "I'll make this up to you. Everything I become will be because of you." I believed him. Every word. Even when I had to cancel my trip home for my brother's wedding because we couldn't afford the plane ticket. Even when I pawned my grandmother's pearl necklace to cover an unexpected expense when Brandon's laptop died before finals. Even when I passed out from exhaustion during a shift and my supervisor suggested I might be working too hard. "It's temporary," I told everyone who worried. "It's an investment in our future." How could I have known I was investing in my own heartbreak? The changes were so gradual I almost didn't notice them. Like water slowly heating to a boil, I was the frog too blind to jump out. It started in Brandon's final year of medical school. He began staying late at the library more often. Our text conversations, once filled with inside jokes and heart emojis, became functional exchanges about groceries and bills. When he did come home, he was constantly on his phone, angling the screen away when I walked by. "Who are you texting?" I asked once, trying to sound casual. "Just classmates," he said without looking up. "Group project stuff." I believed him because I wanted to. For my birthday that year, Brandon forgot to get me a gift. He came home with drugstore flowers and a mumbled apology about exams. I made excuses for him in my head. Medical school was stressful. He had so much on his plate. I made my own birthday dinner and pretended his distraction didn't hurt. 2 weeks later, I finally met the infamous Diane Winters for lunch. Brandon had been putting off this meeting for months, but finally relented when his mother insisted on visiting to discuss graduation plans. Diane was exactly as I'd imagined from our brief Thanksgiving interaction, polished, critical, and cold. She wore a cream-colored Chanel suit and pearls to a casual bistro, looking at me over the rim of her glasses as if assessing a subpar cut of meat. "So," she said after ordering a salad and sparkling water, "you're the girl who's been taking care of my Brandon." "We take care of each other," I corrected gently. Her laugh was like ice cubes in a glass. "Of course. Though I understand you've been quite financially supportive." My cheeks burned. Had Brandon told her about our arrangement? It seemed so private. "We're partners," I said. "That's what partners do." She took a deliberate sip of her water. "You know, Brandon comes from a certain caliber of family. The Winters name means something in Boston medical circles. His father was on track to become chief of surgery before his passing. Brandon has mentioned that. He's very proud of his father. As he should be. And we have certain expectations for him. Certain connections that will be important for his career." She leaned forward. "I'm hosting a dinner next week with some colleagues of my late husband. Very influential people at Massachusetts General. I've told them all about Brandon." "That sounds wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for him. "What time should we arrive?" Diane's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose a fraction. "Oh, I think it's best if it's just family this time. You understand, don't you? These are very formal affairs, very traditional people." I didn't understand, not really, but I nodded anyway. The message was clear enough. I wasn't family. Not in Diane Winters' eyes. When I told Brandon about the conversation later, he seemed distracted. "Mom's old-fashioned," he said, flipping through a textbook. "Don't take it personally. She specifically didn't invite me to a family dinner." "How can I not take that personally?" He sighed, closing his book. "Look, these people are important for my career. It's just medical politics, you wouldn't understand. Let me handle it my way, okay?" I let it go, swallowing the hurt. Brandon had never spoken to me like that before, as if I were too simple to grasp his world. The dinner came and went. Brandon wore his best suit and didn't come home until 2 a.m. He smelled like expensive scotch and women's perfume when he crawled into bed. "Did you have a good time?" I asked in the dark. "It was fine," he mumbled. "Made some good connections." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. A small voice inside me whispered that I should, but I silenced it. A week later, I was organizing our tiny closet when I found a receipt in Brandon's jacket pocket. It was for a women's bracelet from Tiffany & Company, dated the day before my birthday. The price made my eyes widen. It was more than I made in 2 weeks. When confronted, Brandon looked annoyed rather than guilty. It was for my mother, he said. Her birthday is next month. I was planning to surprise her. With a heart charm bracelet? I asked, the doubt evident in my voice. Yes, Heather. Is that so hard to believe? She's still a woman, you know. He snatched the receipt from my hand. God, the way you're interrogating me, it's like you don't trust me. I apologized. I actually apologized to him. 2 days later, I met Kimberly Rhodes. I had decided to surprise Brandon with lunch at the medical school cafeteria, something I rarely did because of our busy schedules. I spotted him immediately, his dark hair standing out in the crowd. He was sitting with a woman I'd never seen before, tall, slim, with glossy black hair and designer clothes. They were laughing, their heads close together over a shared textbook. I approached with a smile, holding the bag containing his favorite sandwich. Surprise! Brandon looked up, and for a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Annoyance? Panic? It was gone so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Heather, he said, recovering with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. What are you doing here? Thought I'd bring you lunch. I held up the bag, suddenly feeling foolish. That's thoughtful. He turned to the woman beside him. This is Kimberly. We're in the same study group for boards. Kimberly, this is Heather, A tiny hesitation. Fiancé, he finished. Kimberly's smile was perfect and practiced. Oh, lovely to meet you. Brandon's mentioned you. Has he? I said, genuinely surprised. He hasn't mentioned you. An awkward silence followed, broken when Brandon stood abruptly. Thanks for lunch, but we really need to get back to studying. These cardiology pathways won't memorize themselves. I can leave the sandwich. No, I'll take it. Thanks again. He practically pushed me away from the table, walking me to the door while Kimberly watched with that same perfect smile. You didn't have to be rude to her, Brandon said once we were outside. Rude? I just said you hadn't mentioned her. Well, she's important to my study group. We're partnered for a major project. I looked back through the glass doors. Kimberly was still watching us, twirling a strand of hair around one manicured finger. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist caught the light. A heart charm dangled from it. January bled into February and February into March. The final months before graduation should have been exciting, the culmination of years of sacrifice and hard work. Instead, they brought a widening chasm between Brandon and me. His absences grew more frequent and his excuses more elaborate. Study groups ran late into the night. Professional networking events multiplied. His phone was perpetually on silent, face down whenever he was home, which wasn't often. I tried to bridge the gap by planning our future. I created Pinterest boards for the graduation celebration I wanted to throw him, nothing too extravagant, just a small party with close friends and family. I researched residency locations, imagining us moving together to whichever hospital accepted him. I even started a secret savings account for a surprise honeymoon once he matched to a program. When should we set a wedding date? I asked one rare evening when he was home, scrolling through his phone while I made dinner. Brandon looked up, startled. What? A wedding date? We've been engaged for almost 2 years now. He returned to his phone. Let's get through graduation and residency matching first. You know how busy I am. But we could at least pick a season or a year. Heather, he snapped, can we not do this right now? I have 3 exams this week and a paper due. I fell silent, stirring the pasta sauce that was starting to burn on the edges. The apartment felt smaller than ever, suffocating with unspoken words. My best friend Jessica noticed the change in me during our monthly girls' night. We were at our favorite wine bar, and I'd been checking my phone every few minutes, hoping for a text from Brandon. Earth to Heather, Jessica said, waving her hand in front of my face. You've barely touched your Chardonnay. What's going on? I sighed, putting my phone down. Just tired. Work's been crazy. Jessica, never one to mince words, fixed me with her therapist stare. Cut the crap. I've known you since we were 7. This isn't about work. The dam broke. I told her everything, the growing distance, the mysterious absences, Kimberly and her bracelet, Diane's coldness, the way Brandon seemed irritated by my very existence lately. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she took a long sip of wine. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this," she said finally. My stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" "I saw Brandon last week. At Riviera Restaurant." Riviera was the most expensive restaurant in town, the kind of place you needed reservations months in advance. "That's impossible." "He said he was at a study group at the library." Jessica reached across the table to hold my hand. "He wasn't studying, Heather. He was with a woman. They looked intimate." "Kimberly," I whispered, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. Jessica nodded. "They were at a corner table. Champagne, candles, the works. I thought maybe it was a cousin or something, but then She hesitated. "He what, Jess?" "He kissed her hand. The way a man kisses a woman he loves." I went home that night and tore the apartment apart looking for evidence. I found it in his desk drawer, receipts for dinners I never ate, movie tickets for films I never saw, a hotel reservation from Valentine's Day weekend when he'd told me he was at a medical conference. When Brandon came home at midnight, I confronted him with the evidence spread across our bed. "Are you going through my things now?" he demanded, his face flushing with anger rather than shame. "Are you cheating on me?" I countered. "This is ridiculous. These are networking events. Medical school is all about connections, Heather. How many times do I have to explain this to you? You took Kimberly to the Riviera. Jessica saw you." He faltered, then recovered. "We were discussing our research project. It's a prestigious competition that could help my residency applications. You kissed her hand. Jessica is mistaken. Or lying. Is that what this is about? You're believing your friend over your fiancé." I wanted so badly to believe him. "Then explain the hotel receipt from Valentine's Day." "That was for my mother," he said smoothly. "She came to visit, and I didn't want her to know I was treating her to a nice hotel. It was supposed to be a surprise. Your mother was in Florida with your aunt for Valentine's Day. You told me that yourself." Brandon's expression hardened. "I don't have to justify every receipt to you. This constant suspicion is exhausting." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. He didn't come home that night. The next day, searching for a spare phone charger in his nightstand, I found an empty ring box, the one that had held my engagement ring when he proposed. My heart racing, I checked my jewelry box where I kept the ring when I wasn't wearing it at work. It was gone. When Brandon returned that evening, I asked about the missing ring. "I took it to be cleaned," he said without missing a beat. "It was looking dull. I wanted it perfect for graduation photos." I nodded as if this made perfect sense, as if jewelers regularly kept rings for weeks at a time. The lie hung between us like smoke, choking me slowly. That night, I called the medical school's financial aid office, claiming to be from Brandon's bank. Yes, they confirmed, all his tuition payments had been received. The last one processed 3 weeks ago from account holder Heather Mitchell. I hung up numb. I had paid every cent of that final tuition payment by emptying my savings account. Brandon had watched me do it, had hugged me afterward, had promised it would all be worth it soon. I no longer believed him. But I still loved him, or the person I thought he was. And his graduation was only 2 weeks away. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, as if the universe was mocking my inner turmoil. I had barely slept, spending hours in front of the mirror practicing my smile, rehearsing casual responses to inevitable questions about wedding plans. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion, a pale blue silk that had cost more than I could afford, but made me feel beautiful. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup carefully applied to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I looked like a proud fiancé ready to celebrate her partner's achievement. No one would guess I'd cried myself to sleep for the past 2 weeks. Brandon had spent the night with classmates, another in a long string of absences. We would meet at the ceremony, he said. It was easier that way with all the pre-graduation activities. I arrived at the university auditorium early as instructed. The place was already buzzing with excited families setting up small graduation celebrations in the reception area for after the ceremony. I carried a bouquet of sunflowers, Brandon's favorite, and a card where I'd written all the things I still wanted to believe about our relationship. Diane Winters was already there, commanding a prime table in the reception area. She wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. She was directing caterers who were setting up an elaborate spread. "Heather," she said when she spotted me, her voice cool as a winter breeze. "You're early." "I wanted to help set up," I offered, gesturing to the table. "This looks amazing." "Yes, well, nothing but the best for my son. The future Dr. Winters deserves a proper celebration." I placed my purse on an empty chair. "Where can I put my things?" "I brought a small gift for Brandon." Diane's gaze flicked to the sunflowers, her distaste evident. "Those clash with our color scheme. Perhaps keep them with you during the ceremony?" She turned away before I could respond, addressing a caterer about the arrangement of champagne flutes. As I stood there, feeling awkward and out of place, I overheard a conversation from behind a decorative pillar. "Mother, please, not today." Brandon's voice tense and low. "I'm simply saying she could have made more of an effort." Kimberly's family sent a congratulatory arrangement to the house that was simply stunning. "Her father's connections at Massachusetts General will be invaluable for your cardiology fellowship." I know. It's all coming together. Just let me handle this my way. As long as you remember what we discussed. The Winters name has a legacy to uphold. Your father would expect nothing less. I stepped away, heart hammering, just as Brandon emerged from behind the pillar. He stopped short when he saw me. "Heather, you're here." Not, "You look beautiful," or "Thank you for coming." Just, "You're here," spoken like an inconvenient fact. "Of course I'm here," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "It's your graduation day." Brandon looked different. Polished in a way I wasn't used to seeing. His suit was new, not the one we'd bought together months ago, but something clearly tailored and expensive. A gold watch I'd never seen before gleamed on his wrist. "Listen," he said, glancing around nervously, "about the seating during the ceremony. The school only allows a limited number of family tickets for the front section." "That's fine. I don't need to sit in the family section." Relief flooded his face. "Great. And for the photos after, it might be best if—" "Brandon!" A booming voice interrupted him. A tall, distinguished man approached, clapping Brandon on the shoulder. "There's our graduate. Your mother's been showing me your research paper." "Impressive work, son." "Dr. Harrison," Brandon said, instantly transforming into someone I barely recognized, confident, almost arrogant. "Thank you, sir. It's an honor coming from you." "Well, the cardiology department at Mass General could use fresh talent like yours. We should discuss possibilities over dinner soon." "I'd be honored, sir." As they chatted, more people gathered around Brandon, professors, classmates, his extended family. I stood at the periphery, still holding my wilting sunflowers, increasingly invisible. The ceremony itself was a blur. I sat in the general section, watching Brandon walk across the stage to receive his diploma. I clapped until my hands hurt, tears in my eyes, tears of pride mixed with something else I couldn't name. After the ceremony, families flooded the reception area for celebrations. I made my way to the Winters table, now crowded with well-wishers congratulating Brandon. I waited patiently at the edge of the group, still clutching my flowers and gift. When the crowd thinned, I stepped forward. Brandon was posing for photos with his mother and sister, a professional photographer directing them. "Can I join the next one?" I asked. Brandon looked at me, then at the photographer, then at his mother. Something passed between them, a silent communication honed by years of shared understanding that excluded me entirely. "We're doing family photos right now," he said. "I'm your fiancé," I reminded him, my voice small. Brandon's jaw tightened. He stepped away from the group, taking my elbow and steering me a few feet away from the curious onlookers. "Heather, this is complicated. My mother has invited some very important people from the hospital. People who could determine my entire career. What does that have to do with me being in a photo with you?" He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "These people have certain expectations about the kind of person a doctor in their circle should be with." The words hit me like physical blows. "The kind of person? You mean someone who isn't a nurse? Someone who didn't put you through medical school by working double shifts?" That's not what I meant. But his eyes couldn't meet mine. Then what did you mean, Brandon? Before he could answer, a security guard approached us. Sir, is everything all right here? Brandon straightened, his face suddenly composed. Everything's fine. This woman was just leaving the family area. This woman? I echoed, disbelief making my voice crack. She's just a roommate, Brandon said to the guard, not looking at me. She's not supposed to be in this section. Could you escort her back to the general reception area? The guard turned to me, his expression professionally blank. Ma'am, I'll need you to come with me. Brandon, I whispered, shock rendering me almost speechless. What are you doing? But he had already turned away, walking back to his family, to the photographer, to Kimberly, who had materialized beside Diane in a designer dress that made my carefully chosen outfit look like a child's plaything. As the security guard took my elbow to lead me away, I caught Diane's eye. She was watching the scene unfold, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. She never belonged in our family, she said to Kimberly, loud enough for me to hear. And that's when I saw it, the glint of a diamond on Kimberly's left hand. My engagement ring. Not being cleaned. Being worn by another woman. The guard led me through the crowd of curious onlookers, past Jessica, who had just arrived and was watching in horror, all the way to the general reception area where I was left alone, still holding my stupid sunflowers and my heartfelt card for a man who had just denied my very existence. I made it to the bathroom before the breakdown hit. Locking myself in a stall, I slid to the floor, my beautiful dress pooling around me on the tiles. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, tearing through me like physical pain. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I heard the door open and a gentle knock on my stall. Heather? It's me. Let me in, honey. Jessica. My best friend since second grade. The only constant in my life. I unlocked the door with trembling hands. Jessica took one look at me and gathered me into her arms, not caring about her own expensive dress. I saw what happened, she whispered, stroking my hair. That bastard. That absolute bastard. 5 years, I sobbed into her shoulder. 5 years and $30,000. And he called me his roommate. Jessica pulled back, wiping my tears with her thumbs. Listen to me. You have 2 choices right now. You can leave, go home, and let them win. Or you can pull yourself together and show them exactly who they're messing with. What do you mean? A slow, determined smile spread across her face. I mean, we're going to fix your makeup, straighten that beautiful dress, and go back out there with our heads high. And then you're going to give Brandon Winters exactly what he deserves. Something shifted inside me then. The pain was still there, a gaping wound in my chest, but alongside it rose something new and unfamiliar, a cold, clear determination. Hand me my purse, I said, standing up on shaky legs. I need my lipstick. Jessica and I spent 20 minutes in that bathroom transforming me from jilted fiancé to avenging angel. She reapplied my makeup, fixing the mascara tracks down my cheeks and adding a bold red lipstick I'd never had the courage to wear before. What's the plan? She asked as she helped me smooth my dress. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm not leaving until I've had my say. Whatever you decide, I've got your back, Jessica promised, squeezing my hand. And Heather? Remember who paid for that fancy diploma he's so proud of? We returned to the reception just as the toasts were beginning. Brandon stood at the center of the Winters table, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by admirers. Kimberly was by his side, my ring glittering on her finger. Diane watched them with the satisfied look of a chess master whose strategy had paid off perfectly. None of them noticed me at first. I moved through the crowd with Jessica close behind, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. As I approached the table, Brandon's cousin Ethan was finishing a toast. To the newest Dr. Winters. May your career be as impressive as your father's would have expected. Everyone raised their glasses. Brandon beamed, his arm around Kimberly's waist. I stepped forward into the circle of light. I'd like to make a toast too. Brandon's head snapped up, his eyes widening when he saw me. Diane's smile froze in place. Heather, Brandon started, a warning in his voice. I raised my glass higher. To new beginnings, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. And to truth finally coming to light. I moved closer until I was standing directly in front of him. The conversation around us had died, curious eyes watching the drama unfold. "What are you doing?" Brandon hissed, low enough that only those closest could hear. I smiled, the kind of smile that holds no warmth. "Congratulating you, of course. On your graduation. On your new fiancé." I nodded toward Kimberly, whose perfectly manicured hand now clutched Brandon's arm. "That's a lovely ring. It looks familiar." Brandon paled. "Heather, you're making a scene. This isn't the place." "When exactly is the place, Brandon? When would have been a good time to tell me you were cheating? Before or after I paid your final tuition bill?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. I noticed Dr. Harrison watching with narrowed eyes. "You're upset," Brandon said, trying to regain control. "Let's talk about this privately." "Like you talked privately with Kimberly at the Riviera? Or at that hotel on Valentine's Day?" I turned to Kimberly. "Did he tell you he was engaged? Did he mention who bought his textbooks, who paid his rent, who funded the research that got him noticed by Mass General?" Kimberly's perfect composure slipped, confusion crossing her features as she looked at Brandon. Brandon's face hardened. "That's enough. Security," he called. "No need," I said calmly. "I'm leaving. But first." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small box. Inside was the promise ring Brandon had given me on our first anniversary, before the engagement. I'd continued wearing it on my right hand even after getting the engagement ring. "I think you should have this back," I said, holding it up so it caught the light. "Keep it," Brandon scoffed. "It's not like it's worth anything. Neither were your promises, apparently." And with that, I dropped the ring into a champagne glass. It sank to the bottom with a satisfying clink, the tiny diamond winking like a secret between us. "Congratulations, Dr. Winters," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I hope your medical ethics are better than your personal ones." Diane stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Security. Remove this woman immediately." "No need," I repeated, setting down my untouched champagne. "I know my way out. I've been finding my own way for years while supporting your son. Something you clearly failed to do." I turned and walked away, Jessica's arm linked with mine, my head high despite the tears threatening to fall again. I could feel the stares, hear the whispers, but I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. Outside in the warm evening air, Jessica hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of you," she said fiercely. "You were magnificent in there." My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Brandon. "What the hell was that? You've ruined everything. We need to talk." I showed Jessica the message. She snorted. "Now he wants to talk?" I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked his number. "Take me home," I said to Jessica. "I have plans to make." Because in that moment, standing in the fading light outside the university where I'd sacrificed so much for a man who valued me so little, I made a decision. Brandon Winters had taken enough from me, my money, my time, my love, my dignity. He wouldn't take my future too. The first week after graduation, I allowed myself to grieve. I cried, I raged, I slept too much and ate too little. Jessica stayed with me, forcing soup and tea down my throat and fielding calls from concerned coworkers when I called in sick to the hospital for the first time in 3 years. Brandon tried everything to reach me, calls from unknown numbers, emails, even showing up at the hospital where I worked. I blocked every number, filtered his emails to spam, and had security escort him out when he appeared in the emergency room claiming chest pain. By week 2, the fog of betrayal began to lift, replaced by a cold clarity I'd never experienced before. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was angry. And that anger became my fuel. "I need to get my things from the apartment," I told Jessica one morning over coffee. She looked concerned. "I can go with you. Or we can send a service." "No," I said firmly. "I need to do this myself. I need closure." I chose a Tuesday when I knew Brandon would be at orientation for his residency program. The apartment looked exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks earlier, dishes in the sink, books on the coffee table, our life together frozen in time. I methodically packed my clothes, my few pieces of jewelry, my nursing textbooks. The big furniture had been mine, but I decided to leave it. I wanted nothing that would remind me of our life together. As I was clearing out my desk, I found a folder I didn't recognize. Inside were copies of Brandon's medical school application essays I had helped him edit, but never actually written. Yet these versions had my distinctive phrases, entire paragraphs lifted from papers I'd written for my nursing continuing education. Curious now, I began searching more thoroughly. In the back of our shared filing cabinet, I found a box of financial documents, loan applications, scholarship forms, grant requests. Flipping through them, my blood ran cold. Brandon had listed me as his spouse on multiple financial aid forms, claiming my income as joint household earnings to qualify for married student benefits. He had forged my signature on loan documents, making me a co-signer without my knowledge. In his desk drawer, I found more damning evidence, emails between Brandon and his mother discussing how to manage the Heather situation once he graduated. Plans for a gradual distancing that would leave me no legal claim to his future earnings. Discussions of Kimberly's family connections and the advantages of aligning with the Rhodes pharmaceutical fortune. My hands shook as I read message after message. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated, cruel, and possibly criminal. The most damning discovery came in a hidden folder on the laptop we shared. Research papers with my name in the earliest drafts, gradually replaced by Brandon's as they moved toward publication. Data analysis I had helped with during late nights, credited entirely to him in the final versions. Even the prestigious research project he'd supposedly done with Kimberly, the raw data was in my handwriting, from patients I had helped him recruit at the hospital. I photographed everything, made copies where I could, and packed the originals into a separate box. By the time I finished, the apartment was growing dark, and I had filled my car with not just my belongings, but evidence of a years-long deception. That night, I called an old friend from nursing school who had become a healthcare attorney. "Rachel, I need legal advice," I said when she answered. "And it might get complicated." 2 days later, I sat in Rachel's office with my box of evidence spread across her desk. She examined each document carefully, taking notes and occasionally asking questions about dates and signatures. "Heather," she said finally, looking up with serious eyes, "this is beyond a bad breakup. There are multiple instances of fraud here, possibly identity theft, definitely academic dishonesty. You have grounds for a serious case against Brandon Winters." "What kind of case?" "Civil at minimum. You could sue for financial restitution of the tuition and living expenses you covered. But some of these forged loan documents could potentially lead to criminal charges if you wanted to pursue that route." I thought about it, tapping my fingers on the armrest. "I don't want him in jail," I said finally. "I just want what's mine. And I want him to understand what he's done." Rachel nodded. "Then let's start with a demand letter for financial restitution. But Heather, you should know, this kind of case can get messy. The Winters family has connections. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Diane's smirk as I was escorted away from the graduation party. About Brandon calling me just a roommate after 5 years together. About the $30,000 I would be paying off for years to come. "I'm prepared," I said. "Let's do this." Over the next month, Rachel and I built our case methodically. We gathered bank statements showing every payment I'd made toward Brandon's education. We compiled text messages and emails where he had explicitly asked for money for tuition and books. We documented the hours I'd spent helping with his research, the contributions I'd made to papers that now bore only his name. While the legal process was underway, I made a few strategic moves of my own. I contacted the ethics board at the hospital where Brandon had just started his residency, anonymously at first, asking about their policies on academic integrity and financial disclosure. I reached out to the medical board with questions about how research authorship was verified for residency applications. I made an appointment with the financial aid office at the medical school, ostensibly to discuss my own potential application, but really to understand how joint income declarations were handled. I was careful never to make direct accusations. I asked questions, expressed concerns, planted seeds of doubt. And I watched as those seeds began to take root. 2 months after graduation, Brandon's world began to unravel. First came Rachel's official demand letter, detailing the full amount I was seeking in restitution, not just the tuition payments, but my share of rent and utilities, the value of the research assistance I'd provided. Even the engagement ring he had repurposed for Kimberly. The same week, the hospital ethics committee requested a meeting with Brandon to discuss inconsistencies in his residency application materials. The medical board began a review of his published research, focusing on authorship verification. Brandon panicked. He called, texted, emailed, begging me to call off the legal proceedings, offering partial payments, even suggesting we talk things through. I maintained my silence, letting Rachel handle all communication. When the demand letter didn't work, we filed a formal lawsuit. The local medical community, small and tightly knit, buzzed with the news. Brandon's pristine reputation began to tarnish. Diane Winters attempted to intervene, calling me directly despite my blocks. "You're making a terrible mistake," she said when I finally answered, her voice icy. "The Winters family has weathered bigger storms than you, Heather Mitchell." "This isn't about your family name, Mrs. Winters," I replied calmly. "This is about fraud, academic dishonesty, and theft." "We can make this go away," she offered, her tone shifting. "A settlement. A generous one. I'm not interested in hush money. I want justice." "You'll regret this," she threatened before hanging up. She was wrong. I didn't regret it. Not when Brandon's fellowship offer from Massachusetts General was rescinded pending the outcome of the ethics investigation. Not when Kimberly broke off their engagement after learning the full extent of his deception. Not even when mutual friends chose sides, many abandoning me for the more socially connected Winters circle. 3 months into the legal proceedings, Brandon's attorney approached Rachel with a settlement offer. It was substantial, covering all the money I'd contributed plus interest, but it came with a non-disclosure agreement. "He wants to make this disappear," Rachel explained. "The ethics investigation is gaining momentum. His residency position is in jeopardy." I considered it, tempted by the prospect of financial freedom and a fresh start. But then I remembered the years of lies, the calculated betrayal, the public humiliation. "No deal," I said firmly. "I won't be silenced." The case proceeded to court. It was grueling. Days of testimony, financial experts analyzing bank records, academic integrity specialists reviewing research papers. Brandon portrayed me as a vengeful ex, a woman scorned lashing out because he'd moved on. I presented facts, evidence, documentation of a systematic pattern of fraud and exploitation. 6 months after that fateful graduation day, the judge ruled in my favor. Brandon was ordered to repay every cent I'd contributed to his education, plus damages for the unauthorized use of my research and intellectual property. The total came to nearly twice what I'd originally invested. But the financial judgment was only part of the victory. The medical board's investigation concluded that Brandon had indeed committed academic dishonesty by claiming sole authorship of research I had substantially contributed to. His residency program placed him on probation, requiring additional ethics training and close supervision. The prestigious cardiology fellowship he'd been counting on evaporated. Most satisfying of all, Diane Winters' carefully constructed social facade crumbled as the details of the case became public knowledge in medical circles. The family that had looked down on me, that had deemed me unworthy of their precious name, was now tainted by scandal. I didn't celebrate these developments publicly. I never posted about the case on social media or gave interviews to the local press who found the story irresistible. I simply went about rebuilding my life, one day at a time, with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. The money, when it finally came through, went first to paying off the credit card debt I'd accumulated during my years with Brandon. The rest I invested in myself, enrolling in a nurse practitioner program I'd always dreamed of but had put on hold for him. As for Brandon, I heard through the hospital grapevine that he'd taken a residency position at a small community hospital in another state, far from the prestigious career he'd planned. Diane had relocated to Florida, suddenly interested in reconnecting with distant relatives there. Kimberly had returned to her family's orbit, engaged to a dermatologist from a suitable background. I moved forward, no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I had reclaimed, my dignity, my future, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. 6 months turned into a year. The seasons changed, wounds healed, and life took on new rhythms. I moved to a bright one-bedroom apartment across town, adopted a rescue cat named Archie, and threw myself into my nurse practitioner program. The financial settlement from Brandon allowed me to reduce my hours at the hospital, giving me time to actually study without exhaustion clouding my brain. Jessica remained my rock, introducing me to new friends and gradually coaxing me back into the social world I'd neglected during my years with Brandon. Slowly, I remembered how to laugh without restraint, how to make plans without considering someone else's schedule first, how to exist as just Heather, not as an extension of someone else's dreams. The legal battle faded into the background, becoming a story I rarely told rather than the defining feature of my life. But its lessons remained, woven into the fabric of who I was becoming. On a crisp autumn afternoon, I ran into Brandon at University Hospital. I was shadowing a cardiology nurse practitioner as part of my clinical rotation. He was there for a consultation with a patient, looking thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, his white coat slightly rumpled. We spotted each other across the nurse's station. For a moment, time seemed to stop as our eyes locked. A year's worth of unsaid words hung in the air between us. Brandon approached cautiously, like someone nearing a wild animal. "Heather," he said, his voice lacking the confidence I remembered. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied, professional and distant. "How are you?" "Managing," he admitted with a grimace that was probably meant to be a smile. "Community medicine is different from what I planned." "Life often is." An awkward silence fell. Around us, the hospital bustled with activity, monitors beeping, phones ringing, the controlled chaos of healthcare. "I've been wanting to talk to you," Brandon said finally. "To apologize. What we did, it wasn't right." I studied his face, searching for the man I had once loved enough to sacrifice everything for. I saw instead a stranger, humbled perhaps, but still fundamentally the same person who had calculated my worth and found it insufficient. "No," I agreed. "It wasn't right. Maybe we could get coffee sometime? Talk things through properly." Hope crept into his voice, along with something else, desperation, perhaps. I'd heard his mother had cut him off financially after the scandal, that he was struggling with student loans without her support. For a brief moment, I considered it. Not reconciliation, that bridge had burned to ash, but closure, a final conversation to put the past truly behind us. Then I thought of all the coffee dates where I'd listened to his plans while mine went unmentioned. All the talking through that had somehow always ended with me giving more, him taking more. "I don't think that would be helpful for either of us," I said gently but firmly. "I wish you well, Brandon." "I really do." But our paths diverged a long time ago. Relief washed through me as I said it, a confirmation that I had truly moved on. Brandon's face fell, but he nodded in acceptance. "I understand. For what it's worth, I am sorry." "I know," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "Goodbye, Brandon." I walked away first this time, back straight, head high, no security guard needed to escort me. That evening, over wine with Jessica and our new circle of friends, I found myself sharing the encounter. "How did it feel to see him?" asked Mia, a pediatric nurse I'd befriended in my program. "Surprisingly, nothing," I admitted. "Like running into someone from high school you barely remember." "The ultimate revenge," Jessica laughed, raising her glass. "Complete indifference." We toasted to that, and to new beginnings, and to the unexpected strength that can emerge from heartbreak. 2 years after graduation day, I completed my nurse practitioner program, specializing in cardiac care, a choice that had initially made me hesitate, given the associations, but ultimately felt right. Heart health had been my passion long before Brandon, and I refused to let him claim any more territory in my life. At my graduation celebration, a joyful backyard party with friends who truly supported me, I found myself speaking with Elizabeth, a new nurse who had just joined our unit. She mentioned her boyfriend, a medical student, and how she was picking up extra shifts to help with his expenses. "He's so grateful," she said earnestly. "He keeps saying once he's a doctor, he'll take care of me for life." Something in her tone, in the hopeful light in her eyes, sent a chill of recognition through me. "Elizabeth," I said carefully, "can I share something I learned the hard way?" She nodded, curious. "Supporting someone you love is beautiful. But make sure you're not dimming your own light to help them shine. Make sure there's room for both your dreams in the relationship. And most importantly, make sure their actions match their promises." "That sounds like there's a story behind it," she said with a small smile. "A long one," I admitted. "But the short version is, I learned that funding someone's dream should never come at the cost of your dignity. True love lifts both people up instead of elevating one by standing on the other's shoulders." Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully, and I hoped that, even if she didn't take my advice, I'd at least planted a seed of self-preservation that might save her from my mistakes. As for me, I continue to build the life I want, brick by brick, day by day. I still believe in love, in partnership, in the power of supporting someone else's dreams. But I believe in myself first now. In my worth, my boundaries, and my right to be more than someone else's stepping stone. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Brandon had been the man I thought he was. If his promises had been sincere, his love genuine. Would we be living in that beautiful house I'd imagined, raising children, building a life together? Perhaps. But I've learned that wondering about what might have been is far less valuable than appreciating what is. Today, I am Heather Mitchell, cardiac nurse practitioner, cat mom, loyal friend, and woman who funded her own dreams. My story isn't about revenge, though that chapter had its satisfaction. It's about reclamation of my money, yes, but more importantly, of my power, my future, and my heart. What about you? Have you ever supported someone who didn't appreciate your sacrifice? Or have you been fortunate enough to find a partner who values your dreams as much as their own? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't measured by how much they give. Thank you for listening, and remember, the biggest investment you'll ever make should be in yourself.